Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Hello everyone, Grim here. This is more of an important upload for me than normal. I don't know why I'm sharing it to everyone, but I know that loss is a hard thing to go through alone. And I'm hoping that those who have lost a loved one will feel at least some sort of comfort hearing this. But it will get easier. So, I'm going to read a couple of stories relating to fathers. Some are scary stories, some not so much, but I will leave another message at the end as well. Okay, well, let's begin. I was 13 years old at the time. I'm now 22, and on vacation with my parents in Turkey. We were in an all-inclusive hotel and enjoying the holiday. The hotel was full of tourists from different countries. There was this one guy around 20 who was staring at me for some time. I felt uncomfortable and asked him how he was doing. Wrong choice. The next few days, everywhere I was, he also suddenly appeared. No flirting, just lurking for hours and watching me. He had a really strange vibe around him, and I felt I shouldn't be alone with him. Now, I was still young, so my parents didn't want to leave me alone in a foreign country, so he couldn't really bother me. But one night there was entertainment in the hotel, which became very boring to me after some time. I told my parents that I wanted to go to my own room and that I would see them in the morning. I left and walked to the elevator. What I didn't know is that that guy who was watching me for days saw me leaving and he followed me. When I saw him also coming in, I was in great fear. He looked at me silently with a sinister smile. This is it, I thought. Some assault or something even worse is about to happen. But just as the elevator doors were closing, someone stuck their boot in between the doors and prevented them from closing. I'm not kidding. All I could see was a boot. The doors opened and it was my dad. He saw the creepy guy was leaving at the exact same time as I had, and he didn't trust it. He looked at the guy, he stared him in the eyes, and he said, "Hello." My dad took me to my hotel room. To this day, I am so glad for the rescue because I don't want to know what would have happened if he hadn't. I'm a trans male, and I was at a mall in Florida. I really wanted to use the men's restroom. The ladies' restroom was out the door as usual, and I really needed to piss. So I said fuck it. I have short hair, I was wearing a mask, my hoodie was covering my chest. I put on the hood and stood in line. In front of me was a father with two sons. I'm bad at telling ages, but I guess one was about 12 and the other to be about 8. There was a man coming out of the stool who started staring me down. He somehow suspected me, even though I thought I was safe. He got behind me in line and got really close, and I just got this really bad feeling. I can't remember him well, but he was much taller and stronger than I was. He kept getting closer and closer. The father in front of me started talking to me like he knew me. He gave the man behind me a death glare, and the creepy man looked freaked out and left. His oldest son was in the urinal, and the man was looking at both of us in a sick and twisted way. So I think the father was trying to protect his son, but he saved me in the process. I'm sure the creepy man was going to hurt me. He was getting closer to me by the second, and it was the most terrifying thing that I've ever been through. If that father is out there, thank you so much. This was a few months ago, and I am still so thankful for you every day. It's been 2 years since this incident, and I'm not sure where to tell it, so I'm going to post it here, I suppose. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with intrusive thoughts. I wasn't outwardly or even inwardly suicidal. I had and still have a will to live, but at this specific time, I was reaching my fucking limit. One afternoon, I was seriously contemplating it. Looking back, I want to slap myself for even seeing it, but it couldn't be helped. Anyways, I really did contemplate doing it, and despite seeking help, the counselor I got looked like they had no fucking interest, because who really does? It's a teenage boy who supposedly wanted to finalize it. This world's fucked, but I genuinely was going to do it. Whatever outside force there is, if God exists and is out there. Despite me not calling, they answered at the most perfect time as my dad texted me asking if I wanted to watch a movie that had recently been released. I almost missed it. I almost fucking missed it. But I made the best decision I have ever made and picked up my phone and read it. Immediately I remembered that if I did it, I would leave my parents without a son, my brother without a brother, and my friends without a friend. Reason prevailed, and I immediately began bawling my eyes out to say yes. That was the greatest night of my life. I have no clue whether my dad is a fourth dimensional being and knew, but we went to the cinema, got KFC, and visited my nan in hospital. When I got home, I cried myself to sleep. I haven't thought that way since. I have pulled out of counseling as it didn't seem to help me whatsoever, and I don't think the counselor even fucking cared. I took up love for coding, and I'm now working as a coder on multiple modding teams for one of my favorite games, and have mostly overcome my issues with my mental health. Dad, if by fate you decide to take up Reddit and read this, Thank you so fucking much. I love you. I posted here recently about the time I was actually and incompetently kidnapped, but I think the near miss that happened a few years earlier is much scarier in retrospect. Why did I have two different kidnapping type things happen to me in my lifetime? I cannot recommend not being a friendly and naive person enough. I also can't recommend the gift of fear enough. I'm 34 now, and hopefully I'm done with kidnapping scares forever. Knocks on wood. So, I was in 7th grade and really into music and going to concerts. My dad told me that we could go see Badfinger and War at the free concert that was being held in Toledo, Ohio. As far as I know, they have this concert every year. It's called Party in the Park, and it takes place at this lovely park right behind the banks of Lake Erie. I was a little hippie who literally wore rose-colored glasses, and my favorite band was the Beatles. So of course I was ecstatic to see a band that had been signed to Apple Records, and I was also psyched to see War, as I loved Lowrider and Spill the Wine. If I recall correctly, Badfinger was playing one day, and then a day or two later War played. I think I also had the opportunity to see Blue Oyster Cult, but I passed. So, anyway, I go to Badfinger. I got my picture taken and an autograph from Joey Molland. So, I was in 60s music nerd heaven. My dad kept wandering off to go get food or beers or to speak to people he knew in the crowd. My mum probably would have flipped out if she had known that my dad was leaving a little teen me unattended at a free concert in Toledo, but I didn't mind a bit because I liked feeling grown up and independent. After all, I just met a real rock star, so obviously I was fine and nothing bad would ever happen the same day something cool happened, right? Well, it got dark after the concert and I started wanting to go, but my dad kept running into people he knew and chatting with them. He bumped into some guy and the guy wanted to show him his new boat parked out or docked or whatever right there within the sight of the stage at the concert. I was pumped to get on this boat and hang out, but there were all these super hot older men, by which I mean two guys who were probably 17 with slightly above average looks on board. And I was shy and clumsy and worried I would struggle to get onto the boat without falling over, so I said that I would just hang out within sight of the boat and people watch. My dad was like, cool, whatever, and told me to meet him at the boat. I was standing there, probably cheesing and pondering about how awesome my day had been, when this guy walked up and kind of punctured my happy little cloud. He was almost 7 feet tall, solid and a little chubby, looked to be in his late 30s or early 40s, and gave me the creeps. I also didn't like him because he looked very much like Mark David Chapman, and as I previously stated, I was all about the Beatles at the time. Random fact, Stephen King actually met and signed an autograph for Mark David Chapman not too long before he shot John Lennon. Stephen King described him as something like the Lights are on, but nobody's home. The house is haunted. This guy had that going for him too. I had never been approached by an adult man I didn't know and just spoke to him like I would have spoken to anyone. He asked me about the concert and I happily chatted away, and then he asked me where I was from, who I was with. I pointed out my dad, and then he asked me if I had a boyfriend. At 13, I did not yet know that whenever a creepy guy asks you if you have a boyfriend, the answer is always yes. Anyway, I told him I didn't, and that's where the situation, which was already making me uncomfortable, got much, much worse. He started telling me how beautiful I was and how my face was beautiful and my body was beautiful and how I seemed so much more grown up than 13, and all the while he was looking at me in a way that made me feel like I was going to throw up. I had never been looked at like that by anyone, and to have that happen that young from a gigantic man was just terrible. He started reaching towards me and I kept taking steps back while continuing to talk to him because I was raised not to be rude. I was so afraid at this point and so disgusted by how this man was looking at me that I was almost in tears. Then, out of nowhere, my dad comes running up and says something like he'd been looking for me and we had to leave right away, and this guy literally ran away. He was definitely not up to anything good. I saw his eyes when my dad ran up and he looked afraid. My dad is absolutely useless about talking about anything difficult at all. He had a rough as hell childhood that he was never able to say and still isn't a word about to me. So he just started chatting all sunshiny about where we were going to go eat. I tried to shake off what had just happened, but I felt so bad. When we got to the restaurant, I had to go off to the ladies' room and cry. I was too innocent to even be afraid that I might have been kidnapped or murdered. If this guy had actually gotten a hold of me, what was messing me up was the memory of how he had looked at me. I was so pumped about puberty, which hit already. I thought having breasts was awesome. Having hips was awesome. I couldn't wait to be an adult, and now for the rest of the time I had experienced the feeling that having a female body is almost a liability. I blamed myself too. I felt like something about me must have been wrong to have made an adult male act like that with me. I know now that that's all bullshit, but it was a pretty rotten time that night after what had been such a wonderful day. My dad and I never talked about it ever again. I never told my mum or stepdad either. I pushed it out of my mind and didn't even think about it for a very long time. My dad has problems with alcohol and the emotional difficulties that came with having a hard life as a young man, but I am so grateful that he scared that guy off, and also that he had the decency not to kick his ass right then and there, because I would have been mortified to death and this would have been even worse. Because my dad had a light and cheery demeanor afterwards, I could pretend that what had just happened wasn't potentially dangerous. So in summary, adult men creeping on young girls can go to hell, and my dad showed the fuck up when it counted. Edit. I forgot to mention that when I told the creeper guy that I didn't have a boyfriend, he asked if he could be my boyfriend, and I didn't want to hurt his feelings. Again, I was raised to be polite. So I said it wouldn't work out because I didn't even live in the area and I was too young, and he just kept not taking no for an answer, which was another first, though sadly not the last for me. My mind started to shortcut when this happened because I just couldn't understand someone not accepting a refusal. I got that level of fear where you actually hear a kind of roaring white noise sound in your ears and felt like I could hear my own heartbeat. When I was 7 or 8, my family went to the beach and rented a room. We had the kind of rooms where you rent out both and they connect through a door. Like there's the door to leave the room and then there's the door to the other room. In the room connected to ours there was this army family. Military dad, some kids and a wife. My older sister was supposed to be watching me as we were down at the jacuzzis during the evening. As we were playing and hanging out, just having a good time, I didn't get out very much. I was naive and all around just a little kid. We are both white skin, blue eyes and blonde hair. This mum literally sits in the jacuzzi with us. She starts talking to us and is just making herself real comfortable. I was a very naive kid. So eventually we start talking books and she's talking about her kids, who are never seen, by the way. And we're just having a good conversation. A really in-depth conversation. At least that's how I feel. My sister decides that she wants to go back to the room, but I don't. I wanted to stay and talk with the mum, so my sister goes back to the room and now it's just 7-year-old me and some 40-year-old woman. It should have set off some sort of creepy alarms, but it didn't. So she starts talking about going and walking on the beach. It's like 10 p.m. and she wants to go for a walk on the beach and get shells. I thought that was a great idea. I was 7. Not only that, but the thought that I'd get to walk the beach at night. I felt so free, like a big kid. I didn't need my sister or anything, so I ran back to the room to tell my grandparents that I'm walking on the beach with Sue, or whatever her name was. I remember my grandmother reading her book, barely listening to what I said. She just shooed me off. It is important to know that I didn't live with my parents. So I start walking down the creepy motel corridor. I'm going through the stairwell like something out of a movie. Too bad it wasn't one that I had ever seen. So I'm walking through the stairwell and the mum's way at the bottom telling me to hurry up and this and that. While walking through the stairs, Army Dad comes running, hauling ass to where I'm at. He tells me that my mum is calling and that she said it's very important and we have to go. He then basically grabbed me by the wrist, softly, not aggressively, and led me back to my room. He knocked on the door and explained what had happened. I never thought much of it until about a year ago when it came back to me. This woman was leading me away to the beach alone at night, and this army guy got a terrible feeling within his gut. So he intervened. When he said my mum was looking for me, as I don't live with my mum, it set off some sort of alarm bells in my head. That was when I realized that something was up. So I didn't resist going back to my family. I just knew something was up. I didn't live with my mum. I'm now 20 years old, and I truly believe that Mum was trying to lure me away to do God knows what. And this army dude had his bad feeling and saved my life. Thinking back, going over this memory, I get such a bad feeling throughout my body. I know now I wouldn't have made it back from the beach trip. So, thanks, army dude. Your gut feeling and having a watchful eye saved something terrible from happening to a little girl. That woman was creepy, and as I said earlier, I never saw her kids. Edit. I was either 7 or 8. I'm not trying to switch it up on you all, I'm just telling an old memory that I haven't thought about in forever. Sorry for the confusion. Second edit. I feel as though she was working with someone trying to take me somewhere. Not so much that she was the predator, but that she was working with a predator and was taking me back as her prize. Because she was adamant about getting me alone on that beach. She really wanted me to go to the other side of that pier. I remember following her like in a trance. No warning bells, no, hey, this is a terrible idea, nothing. Just innocence and planning what I wanted to do with my shells. Almost like the quiet was a warning sign too. Hello everyone. Firstly, thank you for sticking around till the end. I am mainly releasing this one today because my father passed away today, and this is just the only way that I can really put this into the world, for forever, or at least as long as the internet lasts. Sorry to be a downer, but I thought that I would just finalize this with another verse from the Bible. While I myself am not religious, my father was, so it's only fitting to at least include him somehow. Revelation 21:4, King James Version, 1900. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away.